I want to ask you some questions, actually.
Yeah.
This is me pretending that I can interview people, which I don't. I just have conversation. But I wanted to know, when did you first want to be a musician? Do you have a memory of it, like being an actual thing, or is it just a feeling you've always had that you've just been drawn in?
As I said earlier, it's just something that I've always done, and I don't know why. So I try not to question it too much. But I've been singing and playing music since I was a kid. You know, whether it's like grabbing pots and pans around the house, or a recorder, or a violin or a clarinet, and I'd just sit with it, and I'd just figure out how to make a sound out of it and make a tune out of it. I picked up the guitar when I was about 12, 13 years old, and I learned to play guitar by bunking off school and listening to Bleach by Nirvana and smoking roll-ups, and yeah, there's this thing called a power chord, so it's like, I don't know, like that, and
Hand cramp.
Yeah, and once you learn that one chord shape, you can learn how to play pretty much any song going, or like any Nirvana song, or at least a really rudimentary version of, you know, so that's how I taught myself to play guitar.
I love it, listening to musicians and artists talk about where they started and how they did it, especially if they're self-taught, because it feels like there's something coming from within with that. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being taught an instrument, but when you take something and you do it for yourself and you learn it for yourself, there's something organic going on there.
Yeah, everything I do, I just pick it up by ear or just by a feeling. And I've never had any singing lessons or anything like that.
That's incredible, because you're so good. I'm not just saying that because you're my mate. You are actually brilliant. I can't believe you've not even like had singing lessons or nothing. That's cool. I like that.
No, never. And for me, when I sing, it's the only time that I get any peace. And I remember you saying a similar thing about when you're painting as well, and you're dabbing the paint on the canvas. So.
It's like meditation for me.
Yeah,
like, you know, like a lot of people are getting into doing like their mindfulness stuff nowadays, and I was trying to do it, and then I thought, this is so boring. I'm so much better off just doing my art and doing it that way, because for some reason my hands have to be doing something. I can't just sit there and listen or sit there and think to myself. My hands physically have to do something. So yeah, do you feel similar?
I mean, I'm not religious, but I think for me, I would describe singing as being the closest to God as I can get, aside from taking magic mushrooms.
Oh no, I can't with the mushroom thing, because what I told you before this, you know, I was listening to that. I was listening about that woman that poisoned her parents-in-law with mushrooms and killed them. So now I'm just like, what? I can't even, like, I'm now paranoid about taking mushrooms. Not that I've done them for a while, but that is I can see why you said it's the art is the closest thing to being God. I suppose there is a spiritual element to it, you know, and maybe that's why I related it to the spiritual crisis, that art will be on the forefront of that as well.
For me, when I write songs, I don't particularly plan it. It just happens. Yeah. And the best songs or my favourite songs that I've written have always been the songs that I've written in like 5 minutes. And I know this might sound a bit wanky, but I do think that it is a spiritual thing, because it's it feels for me like proper artists are like antennas, and we're receiving information, whether that's through like visual form, hearing it, or a feeling. However we process that, we're receiving information, and we're putting that out into the world.
Have you ever listened to that?
The painting.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to say E.T. Same thing.
Yeah. Don't get me started on E.T. Fucking hell.
Oh, I was going to say quickly though, have you ever listened to the Elizabeth Gilbert TED Talk about the daemon? So in the old days, I say old days because I can't do historical dates and times and names. So in the old days, it might have been ancient Greece, they believed in daemons, and so essentially the idea is that they didn't believe that somebody who was like an artist or a dancer or a musician or a poet was responsible for that creation, that stroke of genius. They're not responsible for that personally. There's a daemon, and it gives people ideas, and it's up to you to sort of like take that idea and translate it, or somebody else will. It's that sort of idea, but everybody has a daemon. And the idea is that as an artist, you've got to show up for your part, and the daemon will show up for their part, and you meet in the middle, and the stroke of genius happens, and you don't know it's happening. You're not aware of it, but it happened. And I love it. I love how artists are so weirdly, madly in tune with stuff like that, and they might not even know it.
Right. I love that you've brought that up, because I've never once had the opportunity to talk about that, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And this year I read a book, and why on earth can't I remember it's flipping there? It's up on my bookshelf, but it was by James Hillman, and it's all about the daemon and about the Acorn theory. That's how I would interpret it, but I wasn't actually prepared for us to go down this route in the conversation, because I never get a chance to talk to anybody about it, because when I do, or I have, they've just looked at me like I'm weird and I'm speaking Japanese. When I start talking about Acorn theory, the daemon actually picks our parents for us before we're even born as well.
Wow, I haven't gone down that deep yet, but that's pretty amazing. Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah. And also when the daemon's kicking off and it doesn't get a chance to do its thing, it makes us sick as well.
Yeah, and that's all to do with how artists might be like sort of like at the forefront of recognising that not being allowed to express yourself is wrong, because it makes us physically sick and mentally sick to not be able to do that. And sorry to jump around a little bit, there's another thing she said in her talk about how when we culturally shifted from believing that the stroke of genius or the genius was outside of us, and we started to believe that it was within us, is when we started to, she thinks, to find artists become more tormented, and then there's the suicides and the 27 Club and things like that happen, because we're now the centre of our genius and we're solely responsible for it. And when you have that and you create a piece of art, and like for example the second album syndrome, where it's not as good as the first one that took off, and it hurts the artists and it brings them a lot of pain, but really the way people should see it is not that I failed and I'm shit and I did wrong. It's my daemon didn't turn up for me that day. That's all it was. It wasn't my day. This isn't my, it might not have taken off, but I did it anyway. Like we said earlier about it might not go anywhere, but you should still do it anyway. You should still turn up for your bit, even if your daemon doesn't turn up for you that day.
And part of being an artist and an archetypal woman artist is that I am going to be stained with the ink and the fire of what I do. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's alchemy, and I guess that's why I connected with the scenes from the Dublin riots so much, and it put me back in that frame of mind of when I wrote my song Black Skies, which I released last year. That was to mark me coming back to the music industry with a big fuck you, basically. and in those kind of alchemic terms, I knew that part of that is that I would get burnt doing that. I was throwing my flamethrower and my match into the room, and then I got singed on my way out. But that's part of it. That's part of the alchemy of being an artist and the archetypal nature of what we do. So in a way, everything that's happening to me right now, it's not really new to me. It's not my first rodeo. I've been doing this and getting this all my life, so
I feel the same way. And it took going through this to sort of join the dots really and go, oh, I see what's going on here. And I'm not big into being like, oh, there's a big reason for everything that happened, because sometimes I just think people are assholes. But I do look for some meaning in a lot of things in my life, and it did lead me down a little bit of the route of, okay, what is it that I need to learn from this that I'm not exactly learning, because I don't need to keep doing this. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to keep having this done or having this done to me, and some of it is allowing it as well. Like there are people that are uncancelable, not just because they're like really famous, but also because they won't allow it. And there's a certain amount of that, although that can't all be controlled, because there are some fucking nutters out there that will just pursue you no matter what. But there is a certain amount of not allowing it on the surface level as well, if that makes sense. You can't quite get underneath the surface to the nutters, but you can on the surface level protect yourself to a certain extent and have boundaries to a certain extent that I never had before. That's for me, but I don't know about you. You seem to have been a bit different in that regard. I think you've got a better grasp on your boundaries than I have.
I've just got big holes in myself and they're taking it out on us. And I just don't care anymore why they feel that way. It's like, you're a fly lord, you're buzzing around my ear, and you are fucking annoying, go away.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the only aspect in which I care about the why is for my own curiosity and also for my own understanding, because I need to know what it is I'm up against. And I think I recognise it very clearly. I see it and I'm like, I know what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I don't need to, I know what I'm seeing. I trust my eyes.
Yeah. Trust your instincts, your own eyes, your own ears. And it's not really rocket science, I think. I mean, I did spend a long time being spun out and trying to figure out what was going on and why this was all happening. And I feel like I can make sense of it all now. Although it doesn't actually, any of it doesn't really make sense anyway. So it's kind of a bit futile sometimes. It's like, what we're dealing with is insanity. And I just think that everyone's gone absolutely mental since lockdown. I think it's probably created the perfect conditions for this sort of thing to take hold on people.
It definitely started before lockdowns, but lockdowns sort of like threw a flame in the fire, I think. So threw something in and made it, exacerbated it.
The whole thing reminds me of the glass delusion and how that social contagion.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. When people, I don't mean I remember as in I was there, but because I said, I remember this as if I was there, but. I do. I have heard about this.
Yeah, but we might have been there in a past life.
And there are we.
I know.
I used to believe in that. I used to believe in that when I was a kid. I used to believe that I had a past life when I was little.
Well, the
I remember it.
The daemon travels, but it's the daemon. It travels through all space and time and jumps into that. Anyway, right?
No, I remember. I'm getting a bit personal now, but I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember my past life when I was a kid. But also when I was a kid, I was very annoyed that I was still here as Birdy, because I was like, when am I going to fucking go back? I've got things to do. And then it slowly dawned on me as the years were going on, like, no, I'm stuck here. I've got to be Birdy. There's something I've got to do here. That sounds kooky and weird, but I remember all of this.
I
remember having panic. I remember having panic attacks about it because I couldn't figure out when I was going to go back.
Well, I think there's something really important in that, and I totally believe you, and I don't think it's weird at all, because I love having these kooky hippy dippy conversations.
Me too.
And I never get a chance to have them, and it's like. Throughout my entire life from being a kid, I've always had this sense of, this ain't my first rodeo, I've been here before. And
for me it was specific. It was like, why have I got to be Birdy for? No, this isn't. I was in the middle of something and you brought me, whatever you has brought me here.
Totally.
I weren't happy about it. I weren't happy.
But it's right though, and then even in getting hippy dippy, but even in this life and this vessel that I'm in now, it's like what's happening to me now is not my first rodeo either. This has been
I feel that way too.
It's been happening to me on a loop since I was a kid. Like when growing up in my house, my mother, was and still is, and I mean, I don't see her anymore. I don't have anything to do with it. But when I was growing up, she was an absolute tyrant. And my house growing up, it was like a torture chamber. And I always felt like I was walking on eggshells. And I was always one wrong move or one breath away from total obliteration. And this is a pattern that's repeated itself throughout my entire life. And, and it was happening before I was even born. There's a lot of intergenerational trauma going on. Totally makes sense that I would be here right now, and this is what's happening to me. But it's quite scary, really, when I think about the all the bad juju in my matriarchal lineage, because I'm in my 30s now. I'm a grown up, and I'm stepping into being a grown up woman, an adult human female. And at this time where women are facing such an existential threat, and I've got to step up now, and I don't have a good role model in my life of what it means to be a woman and to be a mother, and I'm finding my own way with it, and it's very scary. But in another weird twisty turn of events, at this point in my life, it's actually the first time I've ever had any positive female influence in my life. There's you. And there's all the other artists, the potters, the playwrights, the dancers, the poets, and then there's the generation that paved the way for us that I look up to and learn from so much. And I feel like I feel like this is what I'm made for. And why I'm here. I'm finding a lot of meaning in my life.
That's
amazing.
All of it.
Yeah.
I like to hear that you're finding meaning, because when people, I've questioned myself on how I feel about the "this is what I'm made for" narrative, because even though I understand that feeling, and I've had that feeling at times, I've also questioned myself and said, well, you know, it's because everybody wants to be made for something really important, but sometimes it's just important to be here to be an influence on your loved ones or whatever, you know, like it could be smaller, because everybody thinks they're made for something massive, like I was supposed to be famous or I'm supposed to change the world. But you might not. You might just change the world for a few people around you, and that's enough. Because one of those people around, like for example, your nieces and nephews, you could be their hero, and they could grow up to be somebody who influences millions of people, and that you've had a part in that. That's amazing. But that's to do with how we all affect each other. Like we are connected in that way. Not to sound like a hippie, but we are.
Yeah, and destiny and the daemon plays a big role in that as well. You know, we're all here for a reason, and we all have meaning and purpose in our lives. But I think it's when that meaning and purpose gets taken away from us, and the daemon starts kicking off, and that's when we get sick, you know, and that's why you see people having like midlife crises, going out and buying a Ferrari, or people getting diseases, and there's all kinds of ways that it shows up as to when that meaning and purpose hasn't been honoured.
Now, little